Exile, seeing you out. I think I've seen this film before.
So Exile is, I think, my favorite song on the album. I typically listen to slower, folksier music. For me, when the man's voice is really deep, because that soothes me and that helps with my stress and everything. So that might be why I like that one the most. But overall, just to hop on the bandwagon with everybody else on BookTube, I love this album. It is great. But I am here today, again, to talk to y'all about Stephen King. I was gonna wait and do this video after October when I read Carrie and Desperation and possibly picked up Misery. But you know what? I think I've read enough books of Stephen King to be qualified and to talk about him. And I like how I did the video on Haruki Murakami. I think I'm going to do this kind of thing if I read a lot of books by a particular author where I'd go into just author dialogues. Because I'd love to talk about each of these books like when I had read them originally. But without further ado, let's get to it. So I have read this many books by Stephen King, plus the entire Unpictured Gunslinger series, Dark Tower series, I should say, by Stephen King, and I have some thoughts. So I think I'm going to go through this in the way I read Stephen King's books. So I started with The Shining. I wanted to read Stephen King. I think I read this the summer between my junior and senior year of high school. I wanted to read Stephen King because I hate scary movies. And I wanted to, just expand my reading. That summer, I was like, I'm going to read adult fantasy novels. I'm going to read big, classic, challenging books. I'm going to read Stephen King. Don't really know why, but honestly, I've enjoyed the journey. So, started with Stephen King's The Shining. I figured this would be a good place to start because it is one of his quintessential novels that he wrote when he was on cocaine, basically. And I really enjoyed it. I found for most of Stephen King's books, I can say that they are creepier than they are scary. So if you're worried about, being horrified, I can't even, watch a trailer to a scary movie. And so, I love his books. So I think that should just be encouraging to everybody. So Stephen King's The Shining. I don't honestly remember I actually read The Long Walk about at the same time, which this was when he wrote this under his, Richard Bachman pseudonym. And this is actually pretty just, generally, upsetting. It's a post-apocalyptic novel, where these kids, kind of like in the Hunger Game, are selected from each town, and whoever walks the furthest, they don't stop walking. These kids, and I think it's all these boys, it's 100 boys, they must keep a steady pace and walk until everybody else is dead, basically. So it's a pretty, gruesome novel, and 100 boys must keep a steady pace of 4 miles an hour without ever stopping. They basically walk up the East Coast for a while, and there's some other harsh rules and things, and it's pretty, ridiculous, but also I couldn't put it down. Very suspenseful, so liked that a lot. I don't really remember what I read next. I think I did the Dark Tower series. So, actually no, I think I read Dr. Sleep and Mr. Mercedes before the Dark Tower series, and I have many thoughts on this, so we'll get there. Also, I'm sorry about the light strip. I don't really know a way to fix that, and by my bookshelf where they go. So, Dr. Sleep, I loved. Also, this cover is just awesome. Isn't it great? I loved it. I know people are pretty back and forth on it. It is the sequel to The Shining. I actually can say this is probably my favorite Stephen King book. I think it was because it was a lot less, it wasn't less creepy, but the suspense was just, for me personally, through the roof. There was a little bit at the very beginning that was just a little gross, and I was like, okay. But after I got past, page 20, The pages 1 through 20 were a rocky start, but I read page 20 through 531 without putting it down. And so we basically are still following Dan Torrance, which is the kid in The Shining, and he basically meets this girl, and this young 12-year-old girl, and she also has The Shining, the powers, so to speak, that Dan had, and he basically gets pulled into this war, and there's this cult involved. It's just pretty insane, and I loved it. I hope you do too. And yeah, that's about what I gotta say on these. I haven't read a lot of these books in a long time, so that's probably why this is gonna sound like I'm being vague about all the books. But I also don't want to give you spoilers. So we're gonna lean with that. What's happening there? So I wasn't aware that this was a trilogy, so I've only read the first book, I think. Unless this is all 3 books in one. I'm pretty sure it's just the first book. Anyways. Yeah, I've just read the first book. I liked it. So you basically are following the villain and the cop, and their 2 perspectives flip back and forth, and the old retired detectives' perspectives were great. The villain was messed up in the head in a way that I just hadn't read in a Stephen King book before, and that's hard to say. I was quite disgusted with humanity and the world and just life because of this villain. So I'd basically read the cops chapters, the villains chapters, the cops chapters again, and then I wouldn't want to read the villains again, so I would take a break and read a different book for a little while. But the story itself was really good, and the mystery involved and everything was just also very entertaining. So I'm interested to read the other books in the trilogy, I believe, but I liked it. Don't listen to I'm on Fire by Bruce Springsteen during the villains chapters. That is all. The song will not be listen-to-able. You won't be able to listen to it if you do that without remembering this villain, which is unfortunately what I did. Now we're on to the Gunslinger and the Dark Tower series. I don't think that they are necessary to read in the grand scheme of the rest of the Stephen King universe. I was encouraged to read them by a boy, so I obviously suffered through books 4 and 5 because they were not good. To complete the series, not to impress him or anything, because at this point I wasn't talking to him, but it was one of those things that was well, they told me to read it, so by golly, I'm going to read it, and I'm going to finish it. This was pretty weird. This is the first book. Books 2 and 3 were good. I don't remember how many books there are, so I'm going to look that up actually really quickly. Dark Tower series. I believe there's 8 series. Oh yes, there's also a TV series, potentially some books. So we have the Dark Tower, the Gunslinger. Book 2 is the Drawing of 3. Book 3 is The Wastelands. Book 4 is Wizard and Glass. Book 5... What is this one? Sorry. Oh, that's... They were in order, then I just skipped to the very last book. Okay. Book 5 was The Wolves of Kala. Book 6 was The Songs of Susanna. And then Book 8 was The Dark Tower, The Wind Through the Keyhole. I think Book 4 was the really bad one. And the second half of Book 5 was pretty exciting, but the first half of Book 5 was still just... Generally, nothing was happening, and it was really slow, and I was over it. But what I can say about this series is Roland, who is the protagonist, he is the protagonist, technically speaking, but he is the biggest example of an anti-hero or a protagonist that's actually an antagonist to literally everybody else in the book. You follow him on a like Lord of the Rings-esque walking style quest where they have to walk basically across this planet to get to the Dark Tower. The Dark Tower is apparently falling, and basically I will say the good thing about the series in relation to the Stephen King universe is that the Dark Tower basically is keeping all of the evil out of the universe, and all of the evil that you meet and run into and like discuss because of this Dark Tower, you see they're basically all of the other evil in all of the other books. So, with that in mind, like, I met the true identity of Pennywise and all of that nonsense in like book 6 or 7 or 8. I don't know. I think it was book 7 or 8. I actually enjoyed like that. It kind of tied the whole universe together. And Stephen King is actually a character in this series, which is pretty interesting. And there's definitely parts of it that are good and like all that, but I don't think it's. I just had such a problem with book 4 to 5, half of 5, and the ending that I'm just still salty. And it's been like 3 years. It's been a while since I read the series, and the ending just, I'm not even gonna try and say what it's about because it's just the world's biggest spoiler that has ever existed in a universe. So I will say I didn't love the overall series, and I don't think I needed to have read them. However, they did enhance other Stephen King reading that I have done. So it's a toeing the line, like, is it worth it to read situation? At least I feel that way now. So I hope you take that and do with it what you will. Did not like Roland's character, but that's the point. The movie that was made, I will comment on this, with Matthew McConaughey and the African American, or I think he's just African, I don't know. Anyways, the guy from London who is of African descent, who was like the sexiest man alive a few years back. That book basically covers the boyhood story, which you see in the end of book 2 and book 3. So people were upset about that, like not covering the whole series, but good lord, it's thousands of pages. I don't expect, like, I thought the movie was a pretty good like introduction to the series, and I think that's what it was supposed to be doing, because they were basically using that as a teaser for the future TV show that's being made to cover the entire series. And I honestly liked it. If you just don't go in there expecting to get the Gunslinger book or the entire series, but if you're in there for like books 2.5 through 3, then that's basically, I think, what the movie covered. It touched on the stuff at the very end, but it like doesn't reveal what the actual end of the book series is, so that was done well. Oh, that guy's name is gonna bother me. Anyways, I then in 2019 read this in October. It took me basically the whole month. Granted, I was reading other books and I was in a reading slump. I think Noelle Gallagher said it well. The descriptions are a lot. I wasn't too shocked about anything that happened in here because like I mentioned, you do meet the Pennywise character. It's not in the Pennywise form because that's not the true form, because if you read it, you'll realize the demon or whatnot, I don't know, the evil creature, I don't know if a demon would be the best way to describe it. The evil creature basically takes different forms of fearful imagery to affect different people, so you do find out what the real identity or the real like base level monster is. So you do meet that monster in the Dark Tower series. So I was like, oh, I know what's coming. But I did think this book was worth reading. I think if you're going to read Stephen King, there's going to be parts of every book that just kind of make you like disgusted with society and things like that. And this is no exception to that rule. There's a lot of descriptions, yes. And I did mention Noelle Gallagher because her channel's awesome. I will make sure to link her Stephen King video down below because I was wanting to do a Stephen King video before she had posted hers, and she also has way more followers than me. But I realized that and then I was like, I'll just wait till I read some more of the other books. And I'm like, I read a lot of them, so this is going to be a multi-part series. As I read more chunks of Stephen King, I will throw more videos together. So I also love this cover. Isn't it just great? But yeah, that's all. I decided to read The Stand in April of this year when we were peak pandemic. I mean, I still haven't left my house yet, so we're still in it. But it was like earlier on when things were more stressful and there was more uncertainty. Now America's just accepted its fate that we're never going to be free again because people can't wear a mask. Wear a mask, bro. Do it. I liked this book. I was not in a great mindset when I started reading it because, again, we were in a pandemic. But once I got past how everyone was dying and the disease was spreading, the book was actually very good. I read another pandemic book more recently, and I was in a much better place about everything. And also, that other book didn't quite go into as much detail on like how the disease was spreading and how everyone was dying. This one goes into great detail to instill fear, as Stephen King does. So I did love the book, though. This was a great book besides the beginning, and I think that was my own fault for reading it right now. So I think it's great. It's awesome. It's a beast. Yeah, I will say, just a general disclaimer on Stephen King, is a lot of his books are very big, and if you're like worried about that or just like intimidated by the size, then you don't have to try and read it fast. But also, I challenge you to try not get these through his big books quickly, because usually the suspense is there to like tug you along at just to keep. I've with the exception of it being a little too descriptor heavy at certain points and a little slow, I haven't read another one of his books that I was like, I'm bored of this, I'm gonna go put it down. Besides, obviously, book 4 of the Dark Tower series. So I think his writing is very interesting, and I am just like very fascinated with the way his brain works, and I am quite concerned for his mental health. But him actually being a character in the Dark Tower series was super interesting, because you get to see him like when he was churning out all the books and he was like not doing great in the head, and I'm like glad to see that he's doing better now and he's no longer on as many drugs. So yeah, that's what I got to say about Stephen King Part 1. Hope y'all enjoyed the video. I don't know if I have another author that I've read quite enough books for to do another one of these like author focused videos, except for maybe Michael Crichton, because most of that box there is Michael Crichton. But I have a few more to read, I think. I think once I read Jurassic Park, I will throw a video together for him. But yeah, Stephen King. Hope y'all enjoyed. I also just hope you guys know I'm not going to edit anything. I did all of this in one fell swoop, and y'all get to deal with my looking around and things. So yeah, that's all she wrote. Thanks for watching, y'all. Let me know if you want me to cover anything else in any other videos.